In 5th place of the County Championship last year and kicking off our next preview for the 2025 season, it's the Foxes of Leicestershire. They were a typical mid-table side, I'd say, of County Championship cricket in the fact that they were pretty difficult to beat, but they also very rarely won. I mean, they didn't take many points away from big teams. They just drew a hell of a lot of games. I mean, I think they were slightly atypical for a mid-table side in the sense of they actually only won one game. They won less than Gloucestershire and Glamorgan, who finished 7th and 6th below them. And won as many as Derbyshire did. Plum last, who were well adrift, as I mentioned in the preview for Derbyshire. But yeah, Leicestershire were just a kind of a hard-to-beat side. They didn't take enough wickets, but often were quite hard to get out. Another team who've gone for a new captain this season, another Aussie being a captain of a domestic side here in England. It's Peter Hampscombe will take the reins off club stalwart Lewis Hill after the 2025 season, when he struggled quite personally with his batting form, having been a sort of consistent performer for them for a while. So yeah, Leicestershire again, like the teams below them, I would say their limiting factor is their bowling lineup. And they've really backed it. They haven't changed much going into 2025, which I think is interesting. They have got a new face though in the terms of bowling all-rounder Logan Van Beek. I think he's a really positive signing for them. A very busy and good cricketer, just all-round. He's a bowling all-rounder. He can bat properly. Scored a first-class 100, but can take some wickets for them. I think he's a big signing. But aside from that, they haven't signed any domestic talent or anyone to come in to really to bring in. I mean, and that is the case having had a bowling season where not one bowler averaged under 30. As I've mentioned in the first preview, I think that 30 mark is a good sign of a decent bowler, and they didn't have anyone below it, nor particularly around it. Though I must admit, I'm a big fan of this Leicestershire team. I actually do believe in their young lineup. I believe in their young bowlers. They've got plenty of high ceiling players, if you would. A lot of players who I think can grow a lot and continue to be very, very good for the future of Leicestershire. Where if you compare and contrast with, say, Glamorgan, who I'd say they've got maybe some players who are maybe at a better standard now, but they are nearing 30, getting up in the ages of 30. So I think it's a strong season for Leicestershire. It's an important season for them. But they will be led by evergreen Chris Wright. He's a sort of senior pro amongst a lot of young cricketers. He only played twice last year, but he's a very, very, very savvy operator and is a consistent wicket taker for any county he's played for, but for Leicestershire of recent times. Alongside him, sort of leading the lineup is going to be Scott Curry. Scott Curry was their breakout star of 2024. He had a very good season. He scored runs with the bat, but as a bowler, mainly what he's in the team for, he scored 29. He scored 29. Took 29 wickets. And yeah, I think will just continue to grow on that. He's sort of in his mid-20s. He's got plenty of talent, I'd say, from just that eye test, if you would like. But yeah, a player who is worth highlighting, who plays for Leicestershire, is Josh Hull. The 6'7" left armour was tipped by England. He played in a test for England last season, but he also averaged 182 with the ball in county championship cricket at an economy of 5. So he is one of these players who I think it's probably the prime example of Leicestershire's lineup in the sense of he's got this incredibly high ceiling. I mean, 6'7" left armour is kind of like the dream of IPL analysts. It's kind of this modern day bowling criteria of, he's tall, left-handed, and he's got that above average pace, which is easy to do through a frame of 6'7" and well-built lad. And again, he's got skills. He can swing it back into right-handers. He's got the kind of classic left armour abilities. It's just that consistency of anyone is that age. But yeah, in the same year of his test debut, he averaged 182 runs, which I think just sums up the Bazball world that we live in, that it's just all about how they think your upside is. And I do think he's got an incredibly high upside, and I think I would totally suggest that the people at ECB know a little bit more than I do about perhaps his abilities to brace that front leg and add even more pace and etc, etc. But I think 2025 could be an interesting season for Josh Hull, a year older, of that maturing his body and being ready to really go into a full season and play a lot more, and yeah, be hopefully a lot better for Leicestershire's sake. But basically all of their bowlers are actually sort of, to use an American phrase, of like two-way players. I mean, they're all-rounders. They're players, Curry, who I've mentioned in the sort of total bowler lineup, he scored 100 last year. They've also got the two Bens of Mike and Green, are very, very much bowling all-rounders, very talented bowlers, but they can bat properly. I mean, Tom Scriven, who I back a lot as a very good seam bowler, he had a sub-par bowling season for 2024, but he scored 350s in their season last year. So it kind of sort of sums up their season last year in the sense of they could kind of stick around in games because of their batting and their lower order batting, but their bowling just wasn't quite good enough. And Tom Scriven highlights that in many ways because of those 350s, but he took 15 wickets at an average of 58. So, I mean, any bowler, you'll be looking for a better season than that. But I think I really believe in Scriven's abilities, just that eye test sort of thing. And yeah, another bowler who's a bowling all-rounder who'll be looking for that kind of breakout season is the sort of, I mean, he was a kind of cult hero for a while. Roman Walker took a fifer against India when they toured in 2022. He took the wickets of Rohit Sharma and Virat Kohli. I remember being like, oh wow, who's this guy bowling away swingers? And he was like snicking off the whole Indian top lineup. I think he also got Jadeja out. I mean, got a lot of good players out, but he's not really returned anything in red ball cricket since. He's been a white ball player for the most part. But he'll be kind of looking to sneak his way past some of those aforementioned names and Ben Green and Ben Mike who've shown some real talent. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think whether or not he'll be able to sneak into the lineup, I think is a question really. But he's got the talent. I mean, if you can get Virat Kohli out in a red ball game, I think it's safe to say you've probably got the talent. Anyway, and supplementing this seam bowling lineup is another all-rounder in Ian Holland. I think he's one of the most peculiar players of county championship cricket of the last sort of 5 years because he played for Hampshire in a Division 1 team and he was the opening batsman, but averaged the whole time a kind of middling 20s with the bat. But his ability with the bat is incredibly high. I mean, he's always been an opener, which is just not an easy thing to do, as I've mentioned in previous previews. But his ability to take wickets as a sort of frontline seamer whilst also being a top order batter is kind of invaluable, and he does do that. I mean, he consistently does that. He takes a lot of wickets with the ball. So I'd be interested to see how Ian Holland will do this year. In the spin bowling department, it is one of another sort of a young star of England cricket alongside Josh Hole, and maybe a bit more of a long star because it's Rayan Ahmed. I mean, he was tipped for success by the late, great Shane Warne when I think he was 13, maybe 14. I think I remember seeing videos of it because I think he's about my age, of maybe a year or so younger. I remember being like, oh, that's really cool. But last year, he did take 13 wickets at an average of 60. I mean, it's not anything to look at and be like, wow, how exciting is that? But he's also already played in Test cricket for England and done very well on overseas tours. I mean, again, quite indicative of how difficult it is to take spin bowling wickets in the UK. But yeah, I can't see him having as bad of a year with the ball again. I mean, he had a very good year with the bat. I think he really showed his strides that he's made batting wise. But simply put, I believe in his source. I believe in his ability to vary up lines and lengths, and his variations as good as anything. He just needs to work on that consistency of length and really turning that leg break, because it is always difficult if you're not challenging both edges. He's got a stunning googly. I think if anyone who's watched him play in white ball cricket would know that. But his his big leg spinner, which is obviously important for your stock ball in red ball cricket, has just not been there for the last few seasons. So hopefully has been working on that over the winter. Alongside him will be Liam Travaskis in that sort of spin bowling all-rounder role. Again, another player who just sort of underperformed in their main skill, but had a very good year with the bat. Travaskis being sort of an all-rounder. He averaged 42 with the bat last year, but he just had an average with the ball of over 100. He didn't really take wickets. He just couldn't get over the hill. And again, whether or not, it's always difficult when you're looking at statistics in a vacuum, whether or not it was just consistently Leicestershire were playing on quite flat wickets which weren't spinning, but those two spinners I think have got a talent level well above the ability of taking having averages above 60 and 100 respectively. So I'm sure that both of them will be looking to be in the team. I think it would be struggle for both of them to stay in the team because of sort of the being an all-rounding spinner. Kind of having two of those in a lineup is difficult unless Rayan Ahmed is going to bat in the top of the lineup really. And as I've mentioned, so as I've kind of touched on, Leicestershire's lineup is full of all-rounders, so there's sort of less to talk about when it comes to specialist batters. Most notably, I guess, is their captain, Peter Hanscom. He's a brilliant player, very similar to Cameron Bancroft, but kind of a middle-order equivalent, I'd really say. He averaged 74 across his 10 matches last year for them. He scored 894 runs. if he's playing a whole season, I have no doubt he'll go past 1,000 runs. He's a very good player of a spin, very good player, just full stop. I think he's like many, he scored hundreds for Australia, but I think he's like many players across Australia for years and years. You probably make it into quite a lot of international sides if it wasn't for the sort of talent they have in their middle order. That he just was never going to get rid of a Travis Head, a Steve Smith, or a Labuschagne over the last 5 years. So yeah, he's a really, really talented player, and I'd be lucky to have them at Leicestershire for a whole season. At the top of the order, Rishi Patel has really established himself as a top-level opener. Averaged 36 last season, and I think he'll probably look to go up that. I think his ability, he's a very classical player, beautiful on drives and off drives, and those kind of classic in the V shots. He's just very aesthetically pleasing. This year, I think they're going to be more consistent at keeping Sol Budinger as his opening partner. That left-hander, he's an aggressive player. I think they work well together as a kind of fire and ice duo, if you will. He's got a whole range of strokes. He's very aggressive, and I think he'll work well. As I mentioned, Ian Holland is a top-order batsman for them. He opened a lot for them, but I think he'll slot more likely be in at 3. In the pre-season friendlies, he's been batting 3 a lot. I think his average will probably start moving up. As I mentioned, it's as low as 25, which is quite a surprise, but he is plenty good enough to have that average a lot higher than that. But he will probably slide down the order even more when in May, Shan Masood will be joining them for a while. He is just a brilliant signing in county cricket. I think he's proven himself to be so. He's proven his ability to dominate, especially in Division 2, having had 2 years at Yorkshire and at least 1 year at Derbyshire the year before that. There's no such thing as a sure thing in cricket, but I think Shan Masood scoring consistent runs in your lineup in Division 2 of county cricket is pretty as good as a sure thing gets. There's no test matches for Pakistan across the whole of the summer, so he should be available unless he is picked for white ball tours, which is possible, but he hasn't since 2022. So yeah, he should be able to move his way into that lineup and score a lot of runs, I think. Another batsman who will be looking to sort of have a bigger season or maybe more consistent season is Louis Kimber. I mean, as I've mentioned already, I'm a Sussex fan. I watched him score 243 off 127 balls against Sussex as he tried to chase down a massive 4th innings total at Hove. I think it should be mentioned as sort of a review of 2024 of nothing. He scored 243 from 127 balls, as I said, in a chase of 464 to be specific. He got to his 200 off 100 balls. He hit 21 sixes. Both of those are records for first-class cricket in England. And he also scored 43 runs in 1 over against Ollie Robinson, which are kind of unfathomable how one even does that, but he did. And again, he had aside from that, which is a hard thing to say, aside from that, he had quite an average year. But I think anyone who's good enough to play an innings of that calibre has got the upside to score maybe more runs across a whole season. He's got some sort of he's a wicketkeeper batsman, but he often just plays as a specialist batsman, and that's because Leicestershire have quite a lot of wicketkeeper batsmen. Their former captain Lewis Hill, he had a batting average of around 20, so he'll be looking for another not big season, but looking for a season that kind of returns to a consistent starter in their team, because I think as a captain, when you feel like you might not be in the team if you weren't the captain, it's always a struggle. And he was slightly that last year. So Lewis Hill will be looking for a bigger season this year. Another wicketkeeper batsman who is quite consistently the wicketkeeper because of his excellent glove work is Ben Cox. I think his 2024 is pretty typical of what he is as a player, sort of high averages of high 20s averages with the bat, whilst providing really good glove work with the ball, in the field. So yeah, I think this team is batting, as I've mentioned, last year wasn't his problem, and they've added to it with people like Shan Masood and Peter Hanscom for the whole season. So it will just be a matter of whether or not they can, keep up their kind of career averages, and people can kind of return to maybe form before their captaincy in players like Lewis Hill. But generally, they've got a young squad which I think is built for success in the future. I think they're not probably win now. I don't think they're probably going to get promoted this year. I don't think they have the bowling talent for it. but I think that it's clever, Leicestershire. I think they've got a little more foresight than maybe some of the other teams that have been struggling in Division 2 for a while, that they have a lot of young players. I mean, talent of Josh Hull and talent of Rayan Ahmed are, I mean, a really top tier. So I think they'll struggle to challenge this year, but I think they've got themselves in a situation where, you know, they've got a lot of talent. And again, they've got a lot of batting talent as well down the order. I think it's a sort of double-edged sword. Of course, you'd love having batting talent the whole way through, but if you've got bowling all-rounders who are maybe, you know, literally focusing too much on their batting and maybe not getting enough, you know, wickets in with their bowling is a sort of can be an issue. But I think having the ability to have a team which can bat that deep is really, really, I think it's always a positive. I think if you go into the statistical analysis, really deep dive into it, teams that get low order partnerships, Surrey of recent years, you know, the best team in county cricket, have had plenty of good players at the bottom of the lineup who take wickets but also can score runs. So as I said, the likes of their overseas signing Logan Van Beek, Ben Mike, Ben Green, Tom Scriven, Roman Walker, I could go on with sort of their sort of bowling all-rounding talents. I think they can really, really be the difference if Leicestershire are to have a big season. But I think their bowling is just their limiting factor. And I think, again, with teams that are struggling, it is often the way that it's kind of the bowling lineup that it limits how good a team can really be. They've got the batting to really to solidify and stay in games. It's just the bowling to win them games. So I think the only issue with having that many bowling all-rounders is that the fact that they have less batters that are really looking to make a start. So I think to start the season before Shan Masood arrives at the end of May, or the start of May, they'll need maybe one of these batters and one of the wicketkeeper batters / utility players of Cox, Hill or Kimber to bat up towards that 5 mark, which I think is quite high for them. But, you know, I'm sure they'll be able to do it. And I think the talent of this team is huge. And I think it's become pretty clear, I'm sure, across this preview. I'm a big fan of their young bowling all-rounders. I think the likes of the Ben Greens, Tom Scrivens, Ben Mike, I'm a big fan of. Josh Hull is a very talented player, and Rayan Ahmed is a very, very, very talented player who's obviously been tipped by England for a while to be a big name. I think someone like Logan Van Beek will be really important for those young bowling all-rounders, as I've mentioned. He's kind of the perfect, you know, prototype to build off. The person who's got ability to score hundreds with the bat, but consistently average sort of low 30s, high 20s with the ball in red ball cricket is invaluable, I think, for a lot of teams. A sort of predicted lineup for Leicestershire going into the 2025 season, I've got Rishi Patel and Sol Budinger being their opening partnership. And this is, I've got this in with Shan Masood in. So we've got Shan Masood at 3, Peter Hanscom 4, Ian Holland 5, Rayan Ahmed at 6. I've got Ben Cox being the wicketkeeper batsman at 7, Ben Green, Ben Mike, who I think are interchangeable, at 8 and 9, Tom Scriven and Josh Hull. Personally, I think that's a very good team in Division 2. I think if they can stay fit and be consistent there, and I think they've got depth. I mean, someone like Lewis Hill, he got the captaincy for a reason. I don't even have him in the predicted lineup because of his last season, but I think he's got the ability to work his way back into a team with second 11 runs and just, you know, consistency. But I think they've got the depth, which maybe some teams below them don't have, and I think that is a really important thing. So that is the preview and roundup of Leicestershire for 2025. I hope you enjoyed.